May 20th meeting of the Historic Zoning Commission and calling it to order. First item of business that we have is item B, which is the adoption of the agenda. The agenda was sent out earlier. Is there a motion from our commissioners to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Cashin, second by Commissioner Smith. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the approval of the April 26 minutes. Those were sent out earlier as well and on the SharePoint side. Do I have a motion to approve? Motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
By Commissioner Cashin, second. Commissioner Mayhall. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Are there any council members present this morning? Any council members here? We appreciate their service. We do have a communication from Commissioner Coupin that has been entered into the record and distributed. A couple of things about today. If you'd all please silence your cell phones, including us as commissioners. I guess I need to do that too. And please make sure that when you come up to speak into the microphone, for commissioners and others, to speak closely into the microphone. The microphones have a little green band on the top. I'm not sure that the ones in the table do. Anyway, but we'll just make sure your microphone is on. Just make sure your microphone is on before you speak. Thank you. The other thing, we are implementing some changes today. You may see a different, if you're a regular here, a frequent flyer, you may see a different dais up here than what you usually see. We are working to try to make more of the Metro meetings consistent across the board so that applicants and so architects and others that come before us will have a more consistent experience and know what to expect from each of the meetings. So we're working toward that and looking toward serving you better in that standpoint. We think it'll strengthen the way the cases are presented and hearings, the hearing that we get from you as the audience. The next item is a public comment period for items on the agenda that do not have a required public hearing. So it's limited to 20 minutes. We'll do our best to take all practical steps to ensure the opposing viewpoints are giving time during the comment period. Please provide your name and your location. You do not need to provide your full address. This is for items that are not on the agenda that you wish to bring before the commission. Do we have any such items? Seeing none, we appreciate that. The items for deferral or withdrawal. Do we have items for deferral or withdrawal, Melissa?
Yes. We have one item for withdrawal on page 5, item number 12, 2300 10th Avenue South. The applicant has withdrawn that application.
Okay. Awesome. Great. And then I need a motion to approve the deferrals. Here's such motion. Commissioner Mosley, second.
Second.
By Commissioner Cotton. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Now we move on to item G, the consent agenda. Would staff present the consent agenda to us?
Okay. Notice to applicants, if you're approved for a preservation permit today or you're not the contractor, please know that it is your responsibility to make sure that the contractor has a copy of the preservation permit before beginning work. The preservation permit includes items that require final approval and inspection requirements. The final drawings are part of the preservation permit. Following the preservation permit will save you time and money, as enforcement of violations can sometimes be a lengthy and expensive process. The preservation permit is not a building permit. No work can begin without the appropriate review and approval by the Metropolitan Department of Codes and Administration. Before I present consent, I just wanted to point out to the commissioners and to kind of our regular applicants that we have flipped some things on the agenda in terms of the order of items. We've put the action items first and then the consent agenda items further down on the agenda. The consent agenda will still be read early in the hearing. It's just that if something's pulled from the consent agenda, it's easier to take things in the order as they appear on the agenda. So we're hoping that'll make it easier and for everybody to follow along. So Okay, now on to the consent items. Item on the consent agenda will be read aloud to determine if there is opposition present. If there is opposition present, the items will be heard at the end of the meeting, and a public hearing will be held on those items. If no opposition is present, the item will be placed on the consent agenda. As a notice to the public, consent items will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commissioners debate these items unless a member of the audience or the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. So I'm going to go through each case now one by one. On page 3, item number 1, the administrative permits approved for the previous month. Is there anyone here in opposition to this item? This item will be on the consent agenda. On page 5, item number 11, 1725 4th Avenue North. Is there anyone here in opposition to this item? You're in opposition to the item? I'm sorry?
Yes.
Okay. So we will remove 1725 4th Avenue North from the consent agenda, and it'll appear after the action items in the order it appears on the agenda. On page 5, item number 12, 2300 10th Avenue South, that was the item that was withdrawn. On page 6, item number 13, at 1414 Calvin Avenue, is there anyone here in opposition to this item? Okay, this item will be on the consent agenda. On page 6, item number 14, at 1006 Montrose, is there anyone here in opposition to this item? Okay, this item will be on the consent agenda. On page 6, item number 15, at 611 Boscobel, is there anyone here in opposition to this item? Okay, this item will be on the consent agenda. On page 6, item number 16, at 1112 Halcyon, is there anyone here in opposition to this item? Okay, this item will remain on the consent agenda. And on page 6, item number 17, at 1803 Ashwood Avenue, is there anyone here in opposition to this item? This item will be on the consent agenda. And lastly, on page 7, item number 18, at 3506 Catherine, is there anyone here in opposition to this item? Okay, this item will be on the agenda. I'm sorry, this item will be on the consent agenda. I'm now going to read through all the consent items as legal information. As information for our audience, if you are not satisfied with the decision today, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the commission's decision. To ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements are met, please be advised to seek your own independent legal counsel. Okay, so here are the items on the consent agenda. Starting on page 3, item number 1, the admin permits from the previous month. The recommendation is to approve with the applicable conditions. I'm sorry, just to approve, because I've already. On page 5, item number 11, 1725 4th Avenue North, that's been removed, so that's not on the consent agenda. On page 6, item number 13, 1414 Calvin Avenue, the recommendation is to approve with conditions. On page 6, item 14, 1006 Montrose, the recommendation is to approve with conditions. On page 6, item 15, 611 Boscobel, the recommendation is to approve. On page 6, item 16, 1112 Halcyon, the recommendation is to approve with conditions. On page 6, item 17, 1803 Ashwood, the recommendation is to approve with conditions. And finally, on page 7, item 18, 3506 Catherine Street, the recommendation is to approve with conditions. Staff recommends approval of the items on the consent agenda with their applicable conditions.
Great, thank you. So just to confirm that, then, that's items 1 and then 13 through 18 for the consent agenda. Okay. I hear a motion for approval of the consent agenda. Commissioner Mayhall, second from Commissioner Cotton. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. So for our next item, we have the items not on consent agenda. First action item is 3411 Albion Street.
introduce you. Sorry. I'm going to introduce Russell Sturgeon, who is with the staff at the Metropolitan Historical Commission, and he's the one who did the research for this landmark.
Thank you, Melissa. Today, I'll be presenting a brief history of Mount Olive Missionary Baptist Church, one of Nashville's oldest Black congregations, whose present building is a significant colonial revival structure designed by McKissick and McKissick and completed in 1955. The church is also significant for serving as a civil rights strategy center during the 1950s and 60s. The church sits on the corner of Albion Street and 35th Avenue North, directly across from TSU and within the historic College Hill neighborhood. Together with St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church, also a McKissick building, Mount Olive anchors the neighborhood both architecturally and socially. Mount Olive traces its origins to the first colored Baptist church, formed after the Civil War, and later renamed Spruce Street Baptist Church. In the late 19th century, members established several new congregations, among them Mount Olive, organized in 1887. For decades, the congregation worshiped on Charlotte Avenue, near 8th Avenue North. You can see the original Gothic Revival building here. But by the early 1950s, the Capitol Hill Urban Renewal Project forced the congregation and many others to relocate. The new church was designed by McKissick and McKissick, the first Black-owned architectural firm in the country. Moses McKissick III founded the office in Nashville around 1905. His brother Calvin joined in 1922, and together they became the first licensed Black architects in the southeastern United States. Their Nashville commissions included the Carnegie Library at Fisk, the Morris Memorial Building, and Capers CME Church, all now listed on the National Register. McKissick designed over 2,000 church buildings, and often at cost, because they said they understood the crucial role churches played in the Black community. You can see the Nashville banner announcement of the groundbreaking here, $111,000 for the new church, with McKissick as the architect and the Fred Wright Company as the builder. Here on the left is an early photograph of the completed church before a later addition. On the right, you can see the succession of early pastors, many of whom were not only religious leaders, but civic leaders as well. Reverend Edward Bates, who served in the late 1950s and early 60s, held positions on the Nashville Christian Leadership Council's executive board. And under his leadership, the church became a venue for civil rights organizing. In October 1960, civil rights leaders James Bevel and Kwame Lillard led student nonviolent workshops at Mount Olive. You can see original pamphlet on the left, which closes with the call to action you see here. In 1962, Mount Olive hosted the 4th anniversary meeting of the Nashville Christian Leadership Council. You can see the Tennesseans coverage on the left. Officers installed that evening included 2 of the most important figures in Nashville's movement, Reverend Kelly Miller Smith as president and Reverend James Lawson as first vice president. And on the right is the Nashville NAACP newsletter from 1962, which documents the broader scope of the movement in this period, including updates on the legal work of Z. Alexander Luby and Avon Williams. The newsletter also includes an announcement of a mass meeting to be held at Mount Olive. So Mount Olive really was an important part of a network of Nashville churches that kept the movement organized. Beyond the civil rights era, Mount Olive remained a vital community institution. These 1980s photographs show a full active congregation using the building just as it was intended. Here is the church as it appears today. The colonial revival design is intact. The front gable sanctuary with its 2-story pedimented portico, 4 squared columns, and brick steeple tower with octagonal belfry. The principal exterior alteration is a 1-story brick addition from 2000 at the northeast corner. While it partially obscures some stained glass windows, the overall massing, materials, and character-defining features remain substantially intact. The interior retains its open sanctuary plan and original stained glass windows. And although the addition obscures the light from some of these windows, the architecture itself is unchanged. Looking toward the rear of the sanctuary, the original balcony, pendant light fixtures, and wood detailing all remain intact. The overall proportions and character of the sanctuary are unchanged. The raised chancel retains its wooden pulpit, communion table, and choir loft, with a glimpse into a painted landscape scene. On the right, you can see the baptistry. It's a special space that opens up to reveal the full painted landscape. All of these spaces look and feel just as they did during the period of significance of the civil rights movement. Overall, the property retains integrity of location, design, materials, and association sufficient for eligibility under National Register Criterion A for its contributions to African American religious life and the civil rights movement, and Criterion C for its architectural significance as an important McKissick design church. Thank you.
Thank you, Russell. So staff suggests that the commission recommend approval of the request to apply an historic overlay at 3411 Albion Street, finding that the property meets section 1736-120B 1, 3, and 5 of the Code of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County. Staff also recommends that the adoption of the existing historic landmark design guidelines to apply to this property, finding that they are consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Russell. Appreciate the research on that. That's wonderful. Good. The next thing that we move into public hearing, and the first step of that is the applicant hearing. We always try to keep these professional and orderly. Please no outburst clapping, although for this one, clapping may be in order. So, we want everyone to be able to speak and to be heard. We value your opinion. The applicant, including all the applicant team and the property owner, has 10 minutes to speak, and you can reserve 2 minutes of that for rebuttal of public comment. And then for anyone in the audience wishing to speak, each member of the audience will have 2 minutes to speak unless you represent an organization and have requested 5 minutes in advance of this meeting. When you address the commission for everyone, please state your name and location where you live. You don't have to provide your exact address. So is the applicant here? Anyone from the applicant? If you could come forward, please, if you'd like to speak.
Thank you.
I'd like to say good evening to each and every one of you. We, the members of Mount Olive, are so proud to be here to present to you information on our church that turned 139 years old on March 10th, 1887. Thank you so much, Russell. Please tell Caroline thank you for all the assistance. Thank you, Melissa, for all the assistance. And Stephanie Johnson, long distance, has assisted us. We are indeed pleased that we are getting a chance to present to you what Mount Olive has done and what Mount Olive plans to continue to do. We have with us here today our current pastor, Reverend Robert Holmes, and his lovely wife, Ms. Harmony Holmes. We have Dr. Max Scott, who is a member of Mount Olive today and one of the members that joined as soon as it was constructed on the current location. And he's going to have something to say to you today about his time at Mount Olive for 70 plus years. We also have members of our history committee. We have Sister Joanne Jones, who is financial secretary. Dr. Scott is a member of the history committee. And we've got members and other friends. We got Judy Goldthry, we got Janice Perry, and a dear friend of mine since I was a freshman in college, Sister Joanne Burden. So I'm going to yield the floor to Reverend Robert Hall.
So ma'am, before you yield the floor,
Okay.
could we have your name too, please? Could we have your name too, please?
I'm sorry. I'm
No.
Helen Lester Ross. I'm an officer there. I'm one of the deacons at Mount Olive.
Oh, so great, thank you.
My name is Max Scott. I appreciate being here today, and I appreciate you who allowed us to come. I joined Mount Olive when it moved from the location downtown, where the location now above Tennessee State University. I happened to be a freshman student at that time, and I really joined the church as one of the first students from Tennessee State University, because we live right across the campus from the church, and we were invited to come to participate. So we established what we called the accessory choir, which was about 35 or 40 members from the university, and we participated in every service that Mount Olive had at that given time. We had a very lovely group of students who were very Christian-minded. And let me say, back in those days, students were a little bit more aware of Christianity than they are now, because there are so many other things that take our minds away from Christianity. But at that time, we had some great leaders who would come out on the campus to share with us, to help us, to provide us with financial assistance. And we are so grateful that group of deacons and mothers of Mount Olive Missionary Baptist Church. So we are proud of that little church that sits on the hill across the street from the school. I still attend that particular church. I'm 94 years old. I left when I graduated. I went to Alabama to the School of Veterinary Medicine and studied veterinary medicine for 4 years. And after I graduated, they hired me there on the faculty for a year. And then I was called back to Nashville to work at Meharry Medical College as a professor. And I was a veterinarian, but I was a professor at the university in the Department of Physiology. The reason for that is that we train medical students by using animals, not abusing them, but using them to teach them certain physiological function. And so I was there to see that all of the animals we used was treated humanely, and also taught students in Department of Physiology. So we thank you again for allowing us to come today, because that University of Mount Olive Missionary Baptist Church has really stood out in that neighborhood. It has served the neighborhood, it has served the people, and we are grateful for your time and effort here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Good afternoon. I'm Pastor Robert Hall, pastor of Mount Olive Missionary Baptist Church. I also serve as the chaplain and special advisor to the president at Meharry Medical College. North Nashville is home to me. I grew up in North Nashville, and it is a privilege to be able to serve where I have been reared and brought up. I also went to Pearl Cone High School, where I graduated in the year of 2000 as a student there. I did have some time at Tennessee State University as well, and so this is home. So it is our privilege and our honor to stand before you today to be able to be a part of this decision to rezone our church as a historical site. As you already know, the history of our church. My honor as pastor is to carry that history forward. The beauty of our church is that we are a multi-generational church. Every Sunday we have the honor of seeing anywhere between 4 and 5 generations represented every Sunday in worship. And so it is our privilege to carry that forward, to be able to continue the initiative and mission of being a beacon of light in the community and advancing the need that has always been there in North Nashville and will continue to be there To see students walking down the street coming from Tennessee State and other parts of our community is amazing. From Moses McKissick Middle School, it is amazing. And so what we want to do is to continue to do the work of God in this community. And with your help, we will be able to do such things as that and be recognized not just in our community, but nationally for what the work has already been done. We stand before some great, great leaders. We stand on the shoulders of many men and women that have sacrificed so much for the opportunity for us to stand before you today. So it is our privilege, and we thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Reverend Hall. Are there members of the audience that wish to speak to this project? Okay, I'll close public hearing. Commissioners?
That I can say.
Good, excellent.
I'm elated to see this, and I would like to commend the Mount Olive family for getting this designation. In a way, they are related to me indirectly because I'm a member of First Baptist Church, Capitol Hill, so we came right from that same group that emerged out of slavery into freed persons. I could say a lot, but what I want the committee to consider is this, in terms of architecture that stretch from College Hill to the Queen Washington building on TSU campus. That represents the largest collection of McKissick architecture in the world. I'm not just focusing on Mount Olive and the Presbyterian Church, right? But a lot of those homes up the hill, up on College Hill, were built by McKissick and other Black architects. So in an age when it's becoming fashionable to tear down our built environment, our historic built environment, we need to become resolute in preserving it. If my history is correct, Henry Allen Boyd, one of the founders of TSU, and his wife, Georgia Boyd, also attended that church. So it's a lot of history there that we are starting to appreciate it, but I feel as though we can always do better.
Thank you. Other comments, commissioners?
I mean, nobody wants to follow Dr. Williams, so here we go. But I would just like to say I'm fully in support of this, but additionally, just like to thank Russell and the MHC staff. I also sit on the Historical Commission, and since I've been on that commission, just every month, I'm just learning more and more and absorbing all this, and it's just wonderful, the research and the work that comes out of not only MHCC office, our staff here, but the MHC as well. So if, just a shout out to the audience if you're ever interested. I mean, those are also open meetings, and they're always just really informative, and great work goes on, including the research and all of this. So just, I'd like to thank you for everyone for coming today and speaking. It was wonderful to hear. And so, again, I'm in full support. So if there's no more comments, I'll, for 3411 Albion Street, I'd move for approval of this landmark designation.
Okay, we have a motion, second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Cashin. I will have one thing to say, one comment. One of the wonderful things about this is that this comes from the organization, the applicant themselves. This is not something that we've imposed on them. And we appreciate you valuing that structure so much to put this protection in place. And although there are other protections, this is the only tool, this and the overlays are the only tool that prevents demolition of structures. And so we appreciate the fact that that building has such a history, but also such a future that you're ensuring through this action. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Do we hear all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Congratulations. Okay, next item is 1103 Calvin Avenue.
So next we have 1103 Calvin Avenue. 1103 Calvin Avenue was the circa 1921 contributing structure that was demolished in February of 2026 without preservation or codes permits. At the March 18th, 2026 MHCC public hearing, the commission voted to require that an application for a new structure on the lot be submitted to MHCC by September 14th of this year. The applicant has submitted an application for a new structure for this hearing. Because no drawings of the structure prior to its demolition exist, the commission further determined that the new structure's design should be based on photographic evidence and include the attributes you see here on the screen. Oh, sorry, I had it on the wrong slide. I'm going to go through them one by one for you guys. The commission determined that the new structure should be 1 story in scale with no usable upper level other than the attic space. The drawings show that it meets this condition. The commission determined that the new structure should have footprint dimensions that match those shown on the property assessor card, which are 28 feet wide, 47 feet deep, and 1,316 square feet in footprint, and this is not including the porch. The proposed application largely meets this design guideline. You can see here with a small margin of error for measuring, the primary dimensions of the structure meet the parameters of the commission's decision. However, the applicant is proposing a side porch portion on the west side of the house, which was not a part of the original structure on the lot. The side porch is 1 story with a width of approximately 8 feet. It is located at about midpoint of the side facade. The side porch is open without any walls. The side porch allows for a covered ADA entry into the building, which is required under building codes since the structure will have a commercial use. Because the side porch allows for ADA access and does not provide for any additional usable interior square footage, staff finds that the porch and its extra width meet the design guidelines in the commission's previous decision for this lot. And I'll go back to the footprint here so you can see that there as well. The commission determined that the new structure should have a front-facing gable roof form and without any dormers. The drawings show that it meets this condition. The commission determined that the new structure should have a partial width front porch with a gable roof with craftsman-style front porch columns. Staff finds that the proposed design meets this condition. The commission determined that the new structure should have materials that meet the design guidelines. The materials as drawn meet this condition, but as is typical, all final materials should be submitted for review and approval prior to purchase and installation. The commission also determined that the new structure should have the same window arrangements as the historic structure. Staff finds that this condition is met on the front facade. Oh, sorry, let me go back. However, the fenestration patterns on the side facades do differ slightly from the house previously on the lot. This is the left/west elevation. This is the correct one, right?
I think you went next one.
Okay, sorry. The pair of windows towards the front match what was there previously. However, there is a double door proposed for what the paired window was located at about the midpoint. Staff finds that this is appropriate because the doors are needed for ADA access to the building, which will have a commercial use, and the doors are generally in the same location as a paired window opening on the previous house. The proposed left/west facade also admits the 2 single windows towards the rear that can be seen in older photos of the house. Staff finds that this is appropriate because if the historic structure was still I misread that. Altering of these window openings on the back half of the side facade would meet the design guidelines. And then also on the right/east elevation, okay, there we go. The paired window opening that was at the midpoint of the facade will be replicated in the new design. Because the former house at 1103 Calvin sat so close to the house at 1105 Calvin, available images showing this facade do not fully show the window pattern in the back half of the structure. The applicant is proposing another paired window behind the paired opening at the midpoint. Staff finds this to be appropriate because the previous window pattern on this right east facade is not fully known, and since the proposed opening is located beyond the midpoint. The commission determined that the new structure should have exposed rafter tails. The notes on the drawings indicate that the structure will have exposed rafter tails. The commission also determined that the new structure should have a siding reveal and mitered corner details to match the historic structure. The drawings should show, or the drawings do show the siding with a similar reveal and mitered corners. The commission also determined that the new structure should have porch details to match the historic structure. I already showed that the front porch matches what was there. However, the rear part of the house was a former covered porch that was enclosed. It previously had a shed roof form, but the proposed design shows this rear's appendage as having a gabled form. Staff finds that this portion of the previous structure was non-contributing, given its location at the rear, and MHZC would have allowed it to be removed. For these reasons, staff finds that the proposed roof form meets the design guidelines in the commission's previous decision on this property. I want to now point out some other relatively minor differences between the house that was previously on the lot and the proposed design before you today. For the placement on the lot, the house previously on the lot sat less than 5 feet from the east side property line. The base zoning requires a minimum 5-foot landscape buffer on this side, so the applicant is placing the house 5 feet from the side property line. Staff finds this to be appropriate. The house previously on the lot had 2 chimneys on the east side roof plane. The applicant proposes just 1 chimney on the new structure, the chimney that is closest to the front. Staff supports the applicant's proposal to not rebuild the chimney towards the back because this chimney was not highly visible from the street due to its location and because the chimney seems to have been shortened even prior to 1986. Staff finds that the previous chimney towards the back was not a contributing feature of the previous structure. In conclusion, staff recommends approval of the new structure with the conditions seen on the screen. I'm not sure if the applicant is here. Okay.
Excellent, thank you. Is the applicant here? Wish to speak?
Will Jenner, Nashville, Tennessee. I've got a statement from the property owner, Ross Condit. Dear MHCC members, Lockland Spring neighbors, and Nashville community at large, my apologies for not being able to attend today's meeting in person. As luck would have it, I'm attending my granddaughter's high school graduation today. Representing our business this afternoon is our trusted advisor and architect, Will Jenner. He should be able to address all your questions or any concerns you may have. I want to thank Melissa Baldock and the historic zoning staff for being such a thoughtful resource guiding us through this process. Additionally, I would like to thank the MHZC members in advance for their consideration of our design proposal. We will do all we can to comply with the staff and commission directives and build a structure that everyone will be proud of. Thank you sincerely, Ross Condit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there those in the audience wishing to speak to this project? Then I'll close public hearing. Are there any questions or comments by the commissioners?
I have a question for the staff. I've just, as the pictures were flipping back and forth, trying to count siding and exposure, and obviously may not have an accurate measure of it, but in terms of what's shown or guidance that's given to the applicant, it's hard for me to tell. It looks a little bit wider to the eye in the drawing than what was on the house, but not by much. I'm not interested in that level of precision, but it's important. It's a character-defining feature of it.
So we did have, even though we didn't have drawings, we had property assessor footprints, and that's usually pretty accurate because they're taxing you on the size of your building. And so if you could go back, here we go. The property assessor, if I'm remembering correctly, does say that it's 28 feet wide. When I'm measuring with the tool that I had on my computer, it said 28 feet wide, 1 inch. So from what we can tell, what the drawings they submitted and from the information we had, the width does match.
My question is more exposure on the siding.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I think that would probably be a material that we would approve. We typically require a maximum reveal of 7 inches. I don't know what the reveal there is. Maybe it's 6. I think it's wider than 5. So that could be, if you wanted to add a condition, we can certainly do that, but it is a material that we would approve. And typically, we don't allow anything wider than 7 inches.
Certainly. Just some guidance to the applicant as it's not indicated, so that they don't have to come back to us.
Yeah.
Would be helpful there, and some sort of utilization of scale to say, there needs to be this many boards, and it'll help them do the math. They can figure it out.
Other comments, questions?
I appreciate the applicant's design. I think it substantially meets the requirements that we asked them to at the last meeting. I'm personally okay with the side porch. I think it's compatible, scaled correctly, and I understand the necessity of it for ADA compliance. So I think the staff did a great job working with the applicant to get them to this point. And unless there's any other questions, I'd be happy to make a motion to, with regard to 1103 Calvin Avenue, I move for approval of the staff recommendation with conditions.
I'll second that motion.
Second from Commissioner Cashin. Commissioner Mosley, would you like to amend that, suggest an amendment that would address the siding width?
I think if the staff would use their visual powers of measuring and how many layers of siding are there, I think we can get close
Okay.
enough.
Okay.
Just provide, before the permit is issued, if some guidance on exposure, maximum and or minimum to appropriately fit would be the only suggestion I would have.
Okay, good. So we have a motion and a second. Is there other discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Okay. 1912 Wildwood Avenue.
All right. Next up is 1912 Wildwood Avenue. The house at 1912 Wildwood dates to circa 1938 and contributes to the Belmont-Hillsborough Neighborhood Conservation Zoning overlay. The commission disapproved an application for an addition in February and another in April, finding that the proposals were too massive for the modest house. This application has reduced the footprint, removed the garage component, and changed the roof form to read more like a 1 1/2 story. This design is not larger in that it less than doubles the footprint of the historic house and reduces the size of the non-historic deck carport feature. It meets all setback requirements. The new design no longer has a basement level garage. However, due to the grade, it does pick up a basement level along the left side, making the addition appear quite large when viewed from this vantage point. The applicant has reworked the roof form to help mitigate the perceived massing. As seen from the right, where there is less grade, this is clearly a 1 1/2 story addition. In this graphic, the blue is the historic wall plane. The yellow is 1 foot inset. So on the ground level, the addition insets 1 foot for a depth of 10 feet and then bumps back out flush with the side wall. The gray section is a fireplace bay, which has never been considered an issue in terms of insets. On the second level, red is 2 feet inset from blue. So the ridge raise and the connector piece inset 2 feet, and then the side gable steps back out 1 foot. The purple rear-facing dormer is inset 4 feet from the original blue wall. Staff finds that overall, these revisions have helped the addition to read more 1 1/2 story than prior iterations. Staff recommends that the connector piece inset an additional 2 feet from the ridge raise, such that the purple section here insets 4 feet from the wall of the historic side gable. While the commission has approved 2-foot insets for short connectors on infill, it is typically required 4 feet for connectors on additions. This helps to differentiate the new from the old and helps to keep the massing of upper floors more consistent with the original structure. In conclusion, staff recommends approval of the proposed addition and outbuilding with the following conditions. Number 1, the low sloped connector shall inset 4 feet from the historic sidewall. 2, the reveal of the lap siding shall not exceed 5 inches. 3, windows shall have 4 to 6 inch mullions, and then 4, materials shall be reviewed and approved prior to purchase and installation. With these conditions, staff finds the proposed addition meets the design guidelines for Belmont-Hillsborough. I know the applicant is here and would like to speak.
open public hearing. If you could give us your name and,
This is the applicant.
all right.
Curtis Johnson, Nashville, Tennessee.
Thank you.
Jenny, could you go back to the picture with the purple? Yeah, oh, that one. Good afternoon. This is my third submission and third staff recommendation for approval. We've once again listened to the commission's comments from last meeting. We made changes accordingly. Specifically, we reduced the depth and changed the dormers to gables, reduced the massing. We added some design elements to add depth and character to further aid in the appearance. We've also been in communication with the Wildwood neighbors on this new plan, and they support it. The staff report has a recommendation for approval with conditions of moving the connector to a 4-foot inset instead of the 2-foot that was submitted. We have issue with this for several reasons. The most important reason is moving it to 4 feet, we would lose the egress window in the upstairs bedroom. Code state windows have to have a maximum sill height of 44 inches. A 4-foot inset puts the sill height at 50 inches, therefore no longer making it compliant. During email communication with staff this month, a 4-foot inset was suggested. We specifically asked if this was a requirement for approval, and the staff response was no, it's more of a suggestion. We stayed with the 2-foot inset because it was not required by historic and we would lose that egress window. We felt a little miscued after seeing the staff report later. We have already removed one of the upstairs bedrooms from last submission, and this would eliminate another. Since we know it's just a staff suggestion and not a requirement, I'm asking you to please accept the project as submitted with the 2-foot inset. This would allow for the bedroom to maintain the safety of an egress window. And you've allowed 2-foot inset connectors in the past, so it would be consistent with what you've done. If the commission feels that a further inset than what was submitted is needed, then we propose a 3-foot inset instead. A 3-foot connector would still add the additional wall plane from the ridge arrays you're looking for. This would also allow enough room for an egress window. A 3-foot inset would accomplish both of our goals of maintaining egress and also help to differentiate the new from the old. Please consider approving the application as submitted or the 3-foot alternative. I'm open to questions and any dialogue about what that might look like, and if you have any.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience wishes to speak to this project? Seeing none, I'll close public hearing. I did have one question for staff. Notice there was a fireplace that sticks out in some of the public comment we got that was addressed. Could you address that?
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up. I did mean to say that you received public comment, so I hope you've all had a chance to review that. Yes, so the fireplace that sticks out, you see it kind of in gray here. We have never considered that an issue in terms of setbacks. We've always allowed fireplaces to step wider than the house. I think if we can probably see it in the footprint. No, maybe we don't. Anyway, it was just I think it was maybe 1 foot. It was a very modest amount, and we didn't consider that to be an issue.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions for staff or for the applicant? Okay, good. Comments from commissioners?
I do, this would be one question, or not question, one comment and looking at the drawings is, and I applaud it's evident that a lot of work has gone into making this more, responding to the comments, both the community and the commission. The manner in which the 2-foot ridge raise is going to meet the bump back out. It's really tight it looks really tight in the drawings at the transition from wall to roof. And so if during construction, if we decide, to approve this as submitted, if there's any change in that in terms of constructability where it completes those gables, that certainly some input be sought from the staff. in terms of an inspection. A lot of times when you get to framing these things out, it just gets a little bit more difficult. That's, so I would just encourage the applicant to make sure that, that framing, especially at the roof line, be looked at before getting too far down the line. So it wouldn't substantively change anything with regard to the application. In terms of an analysis of the project and from whence we've come, I find this to be compatible and in keeping with the guidelines and with the neighborhood, and certainly appreciate the applicants and the architects' efforts to do so.
Would you like to turn that into a motion?
Well, I was just going to ask, did you, or I was kind of waiting on some of our architecture friends to comment on the, you know, I was swayed by the applicant's presentation just on that one of the plane of the connector. I do commend all the work that's been done to just bring this to size that I believe is compatible. So just seeing what anyone thought of that. And as far as the egress, you know, the reason for needing that, what we think about that.
The applicants, certainly that height is important for egress in a bedroom. So I'm compelled by that as well. I think, you know, the color coded helps. I'm not sure that a further inset at that location would cause me to be swayed one way or the other. I think as presented, that's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I'm fine with the application as presented for the connector, and appreciate the applicant's difficult work, and that this is a better submission, more compatible for the house itself and the larger neighborhood. So I'm in support of it as presented.
If there's nothing else with regard to 1912 Wildwood Avenue, I recommend approval of the proposed addition and an outbuilding. Is there an outbuilding with this? No, I'm sorry. On the screen says outbuilding, scratch that. With the proposed addition, with only the following conditions, numbers 2, 3, and 4, accepting condition number 1. It's the motion.
We have a motion. We have a second from Commissioner Price. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
For clarity, that is EXC, not ACC.
Good. Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
3811 Central.
3811 Central Avenue. This is an application for revisions to an outbuilding at 3811 Central Avenue. This is a contributing house in the Richland West End Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. The existing outbuilding was permitted by MHCC in 2006 under different guidelines. By today's guidelines, the maximum footprint for an outbuilding on this lot would be 750 square feet. This outbuilding was permitted at 869 square feet in 2006. The applicant is not asking to increase the footprint. Staff finds that retaining the existing footprint is appropriate. Similarly, the existing setbacks are 5 feet at both the side and rear. The applicant is not asking to change them, and the garage doors do not face the alley. If the applicant were proposing to build a new structure, staff would recommend a 10-foot rear setback as per the current Richland West End design guidelines for outbuildings over 15 feet tall. However, since the applicant is not proposing to change the footprint, staff finds that retaining the existing setbacks is appropriate. The applicant is asking to increase the ridge of the existing outbuilding from approximately 20 feet to approximately 22 feet. The guidelines state that outbuildings should not be taller than the house as measured from finished floor, and this structure is meeting that requirement. On the west elevation, the applicant is proposing 2 wall dormers. While the guidelines allow for one 14-foot wide wall dormer, in the past, the commission has allowed 2 dormers if the combined width does not exceed 14 feet, which is the case here. In conclusion, staff is recommending approval of the proposed addition to this outbuilding with the condition that all doors and windows are reviewed and approved by MHCC prior to purchase and installation. I believe the applicant is here and would like to speak.
Hello, it's been a while. I'm Manuel Zeitlin, architect, and Tiffany Wilmot is the owner. Tiffany's lived in this house for a while, and she's primarily, mostly relocated, spending most of her time in San Diego, and is, in a sense, giving the house to her daughter, who just recently got married, and the daughter and her husband are planning to move in the house and wanted Tiffany to live in the dadu behind them. As currently built, it's not tall enough or spacious enough to occupy the second floor, but it is going to be an owner-occupied situation. Both the house and the dadu are going to remain in the family, which is really one of the goals of the recent dadu ordinance. Those of you that know Tiffany know that she's a sustainability consultant. And while many people might approach this project, let's just tear this garage down, start over, build it according to the guidelines, that would be maybe a even possibly less expensive approach. But Tiffany's very much about not putting materials that don't need to go into the landfill. She's about not having to fabricate new materials to replace other materials that were unnecessarily sent to a landfill. So our approach has been, how can we use this existing footprint, this existing building as much as possible? And so the solution was to basically keep the first floor walls and the first floor brick exterior, and then add, I think we're allowed an eave height of 12 feet where the wall intersects the roof. So we've used that 12-foot dimension to sort of maximize our height. We've lowered the ceiling in the garage to about 7 feet 9 inches to get more space into the living area on the second floor. I've worked with a structural engineer to size the steel beams in the garage to limit that to like 11 inches thick. So we're trying to work within the guidelines. We're not asking for any variance in the height of the structure at all. But we're doing a lot to try to fit a living space within that area. We've worked pretty closely, I think, with Jenny Warren throughout the project. And Tiffany's talked to her neighbors, I think, all along. The neighbors, I think you have letters of support in the folder from 3 neighbors. And I apologize to the neighborhood committee that she didn't reach out to them. I think she thought talking to the neighbors that were immediately affected was the important thing to do. So I think all 3 neighbors that she spoke with that are next to her are in support of it, the ones that will be most impacted by the areas of concern that the neighborhood association addressed in their letter. The neighbors that would be impacted by the closeness to the alley or the bigger footprint are fine with that. In fact, so they have been said in writing, but Tiffany said that the neighbors have said they really prefer this because it means they're not having to jackhammer the existing slab, create a lot of dust, a lot of noise, and be much less disturbing to their living situation. So, I realize it's a slightly unusual situation, but we also feel that because of this approach of that it actually is a good model of how to take an existing building that's maybe not historic, but hey, we can reuse part of it. Even if we don't reuse all of it, it's still a better choice. So it requires a little bit exceptions for this, and I ask for your support for that. Thanks.
Are those in the audience wishing to speak to this project?
Chair, if I may, you did also receive public comment on this project.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Elizabeth Roseman, and I am co-chair of the Historic Preservation and Zoning Committee of Richland West End Neighborhood Association. We have submitted a commission letter to you that outlines our position in more detail. But first, I want to say what we are not here to do. We are not here to oppose this homeowner or accessory dwelling units or reinvestment in our neighborhood. We support all of those things. Our concern is narrow and more specific. This application asks the Commission to approve a vertical expansion of a non-contributing outbuilding with a 5-foot rear alley setback, where the Richland West End design lines call for 10. This project removes the entire roof of an existing outbuilding and rebuilds it taller with a new upper living level. Once our structure is rebuilt to that extent, the guidelines for new construction apply. The staff report itself treats the roof removal as partial demolition. The sign up there today said new construction. The demolition is permitted only when the result meets the new construction guidelines. On the rear setback, it does not. Metro Guidelines Part 2, RWEC, ties the rear alley setback to one factor, the height of the outbuilding. That's what triggers this. 15 feet or less, the setback may be 5 feet. Taller than 15 feet, it must be 10. The rebuilt structure is approximately 22 feet tall by every figure in the record, which requires a 10-foot setback. The application provides 5. The guideline uses the word shall. The guidelines define the word shall, and shall means what must happen. The staff report sets the 10-foot requirement aside for 2 reasons: that the outbuilding already exists and that the garage doors do not face the alley. Each deserves a clear answer. The first cannot survive the rebuild. The guidelines do not require an existing structure to be changed, but once the owner chooses to alter it, the result must meet the standards. The roof is being removed and rebuilt taller. That is the alteration, and that is the result that must comply. As for the garage doors, the rule exists, but it is in the Metro zoning code, not the historic design guidelines. For a property in a historic overlay, Metro's own DADU guidance says the historic guidelines govern the setback. The rule this commission applies is RWEC, and RWEC turns on height again. This is the heart of why we're here today. The design guidelines exist in their own words so that decisions are not arbitrary, emotional, or based on personal taste. When a written requirement is set aside for reasons drawn from outside of it, the standard loses its meaning. I also want the commission to think about what this requirement protects. Our alleys are working spaces. Neighbors park behind their homes, trash collection, NES, utility crews, emergency vehicles, ambulances, yard workers, all need to maneuver back there. Every foot of setback helps keep an alley functional and safe for an entire block, the whole neighborhood. The 10-foot standard reflects how these alleys are actually used. And this decision will not stay contained to one property. If this setback is approved for a 22-foot structure here, the next applicant in the rear alley will point to it, and so will the next, and so will the next. The height-based standard will erode one approval at a time. The precedent is properly the work of the commission to weigh here. I want to be candid with everyone here. We take no pleasure in opposing a neighbor's project. We don't. We understand the wish to make full use of a lot, but a lot has limits, and those limits are real. If the guidelines are to mean anything, they have to hold even when it is inconvenient. That is the hard work of this commission, and that is why it exists. We are not asking you to deny this family the ability to build. We are asking you to require what the guidelines require, deny the requested setback, and bring the project into conformance or defer it so that they can come back with a new plan. The applicant can build. We only ask that they build within the guidelines. And as Mr. Williams said today here in the meeting, we should be resolute in protecting our historic neighborhoods. And that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, commissioners and staff. Thank you for the service that you provide to the city. I value it. I'm Lou Ann Brown, the president of the Richland West End Neighborhood Association. On May 4th, the applicant called me to ask that I write a letter of support for a project that she wanted to do to, in her words, renovate the existing area above her garage. I said that I could not do that until I had some information. She came back a few days later and emailed me 2 hand-drawn floor plans and a suggested text that I used for my letter of support. I believe this is what she also gave the neighbors and our council member, Brenda Gadd. To the first speaker, neither neighbor to either side of this house has written in support. There are 3 letters. None of them are next door to the house. After I got the floor plans and the suggested text, I came back to the applicant again and said, please give me more information. I need to see elevations. We had questions about height. She did, and in an email thread that contained lots of information between staff and the architect and the homeowner, I finally realized what she was asking. She never mentioned that she was asking for a variance. Then I saw the sign in front of her house. It all clicked. From that email thread, on March 3rd, Jenny Warren and Metro Planning staff told the applicant's architect that the project could not be permitted at this footprint until the property showed up in our system as more than 10,000 square feet. Metro's footprint, the cap for a dadu on a lot this size is 750 square feet. This exceeds it. It is 869. The architect's reply to Ms. Warren confirms that the applicant decided not to go through a re-subdivision process, which she apparently had considered. By his account, it was roughly 350 square feet short of qualifying, about the size of a two-car garage. So had she been able to get that much additional land, that's what she was going to do. Am I done? I guess I am. We don't want to set a precedent here. That's what we're concerned about, and we're getting a lot of dadu applications. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is James Kelly. I live on Richland Avenue, and I've had the pleasure of working with the commission since the mid-90s when we had the overlay initially. And most recently, we spent a year working with the staff coming up with these new guidelines. These guidelines were adapted after we had a lot of input from the neighbors, multiple public meetings. We all agreed that these were things we could live with. Now we're here, and the applicant is just asking you to ignore the clear guidelines. And that's our biggest problem. We worked really hard to come up with a set of rules that are clear, that apply to everybody, and there are no exceptions in these areas. Now, there are many other exceptions in other parts of the guidelines, and we negotiated those. But certain things are shall, and they're absolute. And we would just ask you to follow the rules. And as a very technical thing, I don't think this proceeding is proper before you because the property owner didn't sign the application. Now, I'm a lawyer, so those things are important to me, but maybe less so to y'all. But the more important thing is, as Luann said, it's the precedent. If we're going to have rules and they're clear, we should follow them. If we're not going to have rules, just say fine, and y'all don't need to come once a month. We don't need to come once a month. But we really think that this is something that the neighborhood actively worked to get to, and so we should follow the rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Anyone else? We'll close the public hearing. Do we have any questions or comments of the staff to the applicant?
Okay, so I've been asked to address the ownership question and the signature on the application. So this property is owned by a trust. The individual who signed the application has now provided documentation to prove that she's the trustee of the trust. So we don't have any concerns with her signature on that application or moving forward with this application.
Applicant, I think you have time left for a rebuttal, if you wanted to do a rebuttal. Could be no more than 2 minutes.
Okay, sure. You know, if this were a new build, I totally agree. We would follow every requirement in the guidelines, but it's not a new build, and it's not just a simple, yes, it's something in black and white, and we follow it to the law because, and they're saying they don't want to impose a hardship on the applicant, but you know, and they mentioned the possibility of a deferral so we could work out a compromise, but you heard their words, there is no compromise, that they're only concerned about the square foot of the footprint and the closeness, the 5-foot setback to the alley instead of a 10-foot, and those aren't things that can be compromised by an existing building without tearing the entire building down. So that's really where we're at is, you know, I think I started to say earlier, I might not have been clear enough, but the idea that, and again, we talked with Jenny about this, and to be fair, she said that this would be something the commission would need to decide. She couldn't really offer an opinion on that. But the idea that this really isn't setting a precedent, because it's an unusual situation. The idea that the fact that this was a building that was approved by Metro Historic when it was constructed originally, guidelines changed. Therefore, you couldn't build the same building today. It'd be 10 feet off the alley. But it is there physically, and my client doesn't want to tear it down. The other thing, they're talking about precedent, following precedent, being concerned about precedent, but then in their letter, they ask you to ignore a precedent that has been approved by the commission multiple times, and that's the width of a dormer, of a flush dormer being 14 feet wide. And again, Jenny let me know when I asked the question that, no, we couldn't have two dormers that were wider than 14 feet, but the commission in the past has approved dormers that weren't a total wider than 14 feet. And so we did use that as an example to try to make this very tight floor plan work for the way the building would lay out, the floor plan could lay out. So anyway, I feel like, yes, there's some variance in the guidelines, but in this case, it makes sense because it's an existing building and you can't do magic to make it smaller. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioners? All right, I'll start us off.
I think I'm fairly swayed by the applicant, really for the main reason that there is an existing approved building there. I think it might be something similar to a non-conforming use where this was in place and abiding by all guidelines, and it seems like those guidelines have been updated. As far as new construction, I mean, your permit says new construction if you're just doing interior renovation. So I'm not as concerned about that, and I think setbacks are there for a reason, and good reasons. But it's a setback, it's not an easement. I mean, I think the idea that people are regularly coming and parking 10 feet into your yard would not be accepted in this or any other neighborhood. It clearly has not catastrophically impacted the usage of this alley in the 20 years it's been in existence. And I think that this is a textbook case of what the DADU regulations is supposed to enable. Aging in place, instead of selling the house, it's allowing it to keep it within the trust, sounds like within the family. And I have no problem at all interpreting the guidelines on an existing approved structure and approving a fairly, all things considered, minor change. Maybe not, it might be a little difficult construction work to take the roof off, but all told, a fairly minor change. But I want to hear what everyone else thinks.
Yeah, Jenny, if I'm reading this right on page 5 of my packet, you might have covered it. I wish, I mean, it would be not like a side-by-side or something, but I'm going from drawing to drawing. But it says, the existing outbuilding is approximately 20 feet tall. The proposed outbuilding will raise the ridge height to match the height of the historic house, just under 22 feet. So we're really talking about, is that really 2 feet or less than 2 feet here?
Yes, increasing the ridge height about 2 feet.
Okay. Yeah, again, with that, thinking of that, I'm also on, I have to agree with everything Commissioner Smith said, that while, I mean, we make setback determinations a lot, this is an existing building, and while a lot of times we do, again, we've come across cases where, well, it's already, if it's already out of what would be, not make it worse, but in this case, I just do find, I have been swayed by the applicants, just that it's so minor of a change in the structure, that I'm also, I'm leaning towards staff recommendation as well.
I concur with both Commissioner Smith and
Commissioner Jones and what she has to say, and I think that this has been a very sensitive renovation, and I understand the neighborhood being very determined on the guidelines that they put together, but I consider this such a minor change that I agree with the staff recommendations.
I agree with my fellow commissioners. I think that if it were a new construction, absolutely, it would not be approved. But it is work being done to an existing structure that was approved. So I have no problems with it either.
So Jenny, one of the arguments has been whether this is an addition or new construction. Can you tell us in your analysis what determines whether it falls into one category or the other?
Well, typically, this is a non-contributing outbuilding, so we would have allowed full demolition of this outbuilding. An addition is considered new construction. It would be new construction dash addition versus new construction dash infill. So either way, it's going to be called new construction. So that was, does that help? Okay.
So that, I don't want to put words in any of my fellow commissioners' mouths, but I think the interpretation that I'm seeing and that I think I'm hearing from others is that this is an addition, and that, again, has been stated that the footprint of the building exists. I won't repeat all those things, and I'm compelled as well, and in agreement with staff's recommendation.
And I'll just echo my other commissioners. I agree as well. And I think we had a very interesting discussion about precedents earlier today in a working meeting. And you know, this is exactly the type of case that comes before us. We deal in the gray and not in the black and white. So this is not necessarily a precedent setting. We are interpreting the guidelines for this specific issue, for this specific building. And in that, with no objection, I'd like to make a motion. For 3811 Central Avenue, I move that we accept the staff recommendation.
I'll second that motion.
Second by Commissioner Cashin. Any other questions, comments, discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Can I address the commission?
I don't think
Sort of unrelated to this, I just wanted to.
Why don't you send a comment to the staff about that?
Just, since I'm retired, I just want to say what a pleasure it's been working with everybody all these years.
Good. Thanks. I didn't know you were retiring.
Congratulations. This is probably my last case.
Wow. Okay. 3805 Central.
3805 Central. Next is an application for an outbuilding at 3805 Central Avenue, a contributing house in the Richland West End Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. The applicant recently applied for and was issued an administrative permit for a 280 square foot shed with 5-foot side and rear setbacks. They're requesting 3-foot setbacks instead. Here's the proposed site plan. The consolidated design guidelines require 5-foot side and rear setbacks for outbuildings. When structures are under 700 square feet, base zoning allows for 3-foot side and rear setbacks. In those cases, staff has often recommended approval of the setback reduction to the commission. However, Richland West End has specific guidelines which state that rear alley setbacks for buildings less than 15 feet tall should be a minimum of 5 feet. Given this specific guidance and the absence of site constraints preventing the outbuilding from meeting the setbacks, staff finds that the proposed 3-foot setbacks do not meet the design guidelines. Therefore, staff recommends disapproval of the proposed revision, finding it does not meet the design guidelines for Richland West End. You have received letter of public comment for this project as well.
Thank you, Jenny. Is the applicant here? If you come forward, give us your name and location.
Absolutely. My name is Franklin Pogue. I am the current resident at 3805 Central Avenue. I'm the owner of the house. I'm joined by my wife, who's here, 2 of my kids. Sorry for the background noise. It was the last day of preschool in our neighborhood. But a little background about the house and us. We purchased, my wife and I purchased the home in early 2020. It was exactly 100 years old. It was a 1.5 square foot home, under 2,000 square feet. When we purchased the home, we had 0 children. We now have 3. Daisy, who's not here, is just turned 6, and then Dick Baker's 4.5, and Patrick's 1.5. Since we became a table of 5 or party of 5, we needed to either move or complete a renovation. We completed a renovation in 2021 because we wanted to stay in the neighborhood. The architect for this project is actually my mother. She is unable to attend today because she's having a health-related issue. But she has been working with, I see Robin over there. She's worked with Robin. She's worked with historical committees in various, I would say, neighborhood associations for the past 40 years. And in fact, people from our neighborhood association who just spoke, and they mentioned, several meetings about updating the guidelines a few years ago. My mother-in-law, or my mom, and I actually attended those meetings. And just for the committee to have the background, the impetus for those discussions were, and as they eloquently laid out, were about DADUs and their concerns around large detached structures that were inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood. So why are we here? We currently have a detached garage. We are proposing to tear down that detached garage and replace it with this single-story, 14-foot, 280 square feet storage shed, unfinished. The design has been approved by historic. And really the impetus for us, because you may think it's 2 feet, we want to have and create a backyard where our kids can play. I mentioned earlier, our house is it's not even 2 stories, so we don't have attic space. We have a small basement. We need stuff to play, store strollers, store bikes. And the current structure does that now, but we want to actually tear it down, even though it is larger. So it's 15%, in terms of square footage, it's 15% larger than what we're contemplating or proposing here. It's actually 18 inches, or a little less than 2 feet from the property line. Our house currently sits less than 2 feet from the property line. Our neighbor sits 2 feet from the property line. So the proposal here, just to ensure that you guys have the proper context, we're proposing increasing the setback from 18 inches roughly to 3 feet, and reducing the size of the storage shed by 15%. I do want to address context here too. If you're looking at the back of our house, if you look to the right and you look to the left, there are detached structures. There's DADUs that are materially larger than what we're proposing here. And they both sit, if you look to the right, look to the left, both structures are less than 3 feet from the property line. And I bring that up not to say, oh, we should be grandfathered in or we should be entitled to what our neighbors have, but only to provide you that this proposed structure fits within the context or the character of the neighborhood. And I think the last thing I would say, because I do want to leave some time for rebuttal, but the precedent argument, I think it's probably really rare for somebody up here to request a outbuilding that is less than their current square footage, and that it moves further away from where it sits today in terms of the setback. So I think my wife and I would respectfully ask that you, you grant the proposed 3-foot setback from both the rear and side of the property line. Thank you.
Thank you. Are those in the audience wishing to speak to this project?
Okay. Elizabeth Roseman again, Richland West End neighborhood. I hear what he's saying, and I know you're faced every day with people coming up here with their emotional pleas to go outside of the guidelines. But the guidelines exist, and they exist for a reason, and I'm going to state that again, because it's important. We've reviewed the application for this accessory structure, and we have submitted our letter of concern for the record. We do not object to the shed. The shed meets the guidelines. Our objection is with the requested 3-foot setback. I'm not really sure I understood what he was saying when he was talking about setbacks being less than they are now, but that's not true. I think his shed must be at least 10 or more feet from the property line, and he wants to move it to 3. He's got plenty of room to stay within guidelines, and he should. But the drawings themselves show 9-foot stud walls. The total height from floor to ridge is nearly 15 feet, and this is not a minor garden structure. It is a substantial outbuilding, and 3 feet from the property line, its mass directly bears on the spatial relationships that the setback standard of 5 feet exists to protect. The design guidelines establish that setback for a reason, and the Secretary of Interior Standards, which Part 1 of the guidelines adopts as its governing framework, are equally clear. Standard 9 requires that new construction be compatible with massing, size, scale, spatial character of the historic property and its environment. Placing a structure of this scale at 3 feet from both the alley and the side property lines does not meet that standard. It compresses the spatial margins that define how this property and this district is meant to read. So the setback requirement is not discretionary language. It does not say the setback should be 5 or that 5 is the preferred amount. It says it's a standard. So the commission exercises independent judgment. That is your role and we respect it. But independent judgment works in both directions. The setback requirement exists in the guidelines as written standard, and this structure with 9-foot stud walls and a nearly 15-foot ridge is precisely the kind of project that this standard was written to address. This is not a close call on the margins. The gap between 3 feet and the required setback is not incidental. It is the difference between a structure that fits within the framework of this district and one that does not. Our Historic and Zoning Committee asks this commission to uphold the staff recommendation and deny the requested setback variance. The applicant is not being denied their right to rebuild or build. They are being asked to build within the guidelines. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the project? You do. Go ahead.
James Kelly, I would just point out that when you approved the last application, it seemed to turn on your interpretation that tearing off the roof was not a demolition within the definition of the guidelines. This is a demolition. There's no wiggle room. And so we think you should follow the staff recommendation and deny the application.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Pogue, you have the opportunity to rebut.
Yeah, I would like to clarify, because I think that they may be unaware of the situation. Again, we have an existing storage shed. It's 350 square feet. We're proposing to reduce the square footage from 350 to 280. The existing shed from the side setback sits 18 inches, so less than 2 feet. So we're proposing to more than double that. It's not 10 as she elected. What we are proposing to do is move it back as far back as we can and put it 3 feet from the rear, again, to create room for our kids to play. And look, this isn't an emotional, I mean, part of it is, again, selfishly wanting more space for our kids to play. But again, I do want to make it clear that we're asking for something that is consistent with the character and less square footage than we currently have today in terms of the storage shed. And further, the current storage shed is attached garage. What we're proposing is to be, have siding all the way around, and I think, and they would probably agree that the proposed structure enhances the overall aesthetic of the neighborhood. So that's how I would conclude. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll close public hearing. Commissioners, I do have one question, Janine, but this staff recommendation for disapproval, it sounds to me like in reading reading what we've seen and hearing the presentations, that the structure itself meets the guidelines.
Correct.
It's the setbacks which are the difficulty. So
That's right.
So would it be an alternative to approve this but deny the setbacks? Would that be an option that the commission could do?
They currently have a permit for this shed with 5-foot setbacks. So
Okay.
they're asking for a revision to that permit.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, commissioners, discussion?
I'll offer some thoughts. This is different than the previous case that we just saw because we did make the distinction between that one being an existing building that was permitted under an earlier version of the guidelines. This one does move, in my mind, to totally new construction. And we do have the latitude to grant setback variations, but usually when we do that, it's because there's some other controlling factor on the parcel. And in this case, we don't really have that. So I find myself persuaded by the staff recommendation and the neighborhood association comments that in this case, I feel like we should uphold the standard setback that's called out in the guidelines themselves.
I concur.
Anyone else? I see a lot of head nods. Do I hear a motion?
I'll offer one. Any other comments? No? Yeah, on 3805 Central Avenue, I move for approval of the staff recommendation for disapproval.
Second.
Commissioner Mayhall. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, 3805, 111 4th Avenue South.
Okay, sorry, I'm getting situated. All right, so the next case is 111 4th Avenue South. So the building at this address was constructed around 1897. It contributes to the historic character of the Broadway Historic Preservation Zoning Overlay. Recently, preservation permits were issued to update the storefront, add new window openings to the left side of the building, and repaint the brick, as well as refacing the existing projecting sign on the front facade, which you can see has already been removed and is in process, and also refacing a cabinet sign on the left side of the building. So the current application is to install painted signage to the front and sides of the building. The proposal exceeds the allotment on the front facade of the historic building, as well as on the front wall of the rooftop addition. The project also includes changes to the previously permitted openings and the mechanical railing on the rooftop addition. So here is the proposed front elevation. As constructed, the rooftop addition sits about 32 feet behind the front wall of the historic building, which I think you can see pretty well here. The applicant would like to add painted wall signs to both the front facade of the historic building and to the front wall of the rooftop addition. So in the design guidelines, in the section that describes wall signs, the guidelines say that wall signs may be painted on the building as a modification in some cases. So with the painted signs that you've generally reviewed are under a separate section, which allows painted signs on
the upper level of an exposed secondary or rear facade. So painted signs that meet that criteria generally result in more of an appearance of a mural, which one is proposed with this and you will see in future slides. However, both types of painted signs are seen historically. Since the guidelines for wall signs says that paint may be appropriate for wall signs in some instances, and since in this case, the historic building is already painted, staff finds that the use of painted wall signs would be appropriate in this case. So we'll first look at the front facade of the historic building. The sign allotment here is about 53 square feet. And the existing projecting sign is about 49 square feet, which leaves only 4 square feet of allotment. The applicant proposes a 33 square foot painted wall sign with the name of the business above the storefront cornice, as well as several smaller painted signs totaling about 10 square feet above the storefront transoms. So this would be a total of 43 square feet, which altogether would exceed the overall allotment for this facade by 39 square feet once taking into account that projecting sign. However, staff finds that the wall signs, along with the projecting sign, combine a cohesive signage that does not overwhelm the historic facade and finds that it is appropriate in this case. So moving to the rooftop addition. For signage on rooftop additions, the commission has allowed an additional allotment for the step back portion in previous cases. So for those, the maximum allotment is based on the width of the facade, but has been limited to the amount of signage which would be permitted without a projecting sign. So in this case, that would be 40 square feet. So this proposed painted sign on the rooftop addition is 116 square feet, which exceeds the recommended allotment by 76 square feet. So staff would recommend that this portion of the signage be reduced to not exceed 40 square feet so that it does not overwhelm the building. In addition, exterior illumination is proposed below the painted sign on the rooftop addition. Staff recommends that the lighting be directed towards the sign and that the fixture should be reviewed prior to purchase and installation. So moving to the left side elevation, the applicant proposes a painted sign on the upper level that meets the standards for painted signs and resembles more of a mural. A painted sign that meets the allotment for this side is also proposed on the lower level near that front corner. So on this side of the building, there is a highly visible side alley. And that particular painted sign functions almost as directional signage towards the takeout window, which is the smaller window on the lower level. And staff finds that the proposed painted sign is appropriate as proposed here. So I mentioned there were revisions from a previous plan. You can see those on this elevation. So the window openings on the lower level are slightly different than what was previously permitted, and staff finds these to be appropriate since they're still in the same location for the most part and still both vertically oriented. In addition, the rooftop railing has been carried forward closer to the parapet. The rooftop of the rooftop addition will only be used for mechanicals that will be accessed via an exterior stair and new ladder that you can see here on the right side of the building. The railing is required by building codes to safely service these units. So currently there is no signage on the right side of the building. A painted sign is proposed at the front corner and meets the allotment for this side. External illumination is also proposed above and below this sign, and staff would just recommend the same conditions for external illumination be applied to these lighting sources. So in conclusion, staff recommends approval of the proposed signage and alterations
with the following conditions. One, that the signage on the front of the rooftop addition be reduced so that it does not exceed 40 square feet. Two, that building lighting be directed onto the sign and shielded to minimize glare in the right-of-way or on adjacent properties. And three, that material selections of the windows, railing, and exterior light fixtures be approved prior to purchase and installations. And with those conditions, staff finds that the proposed application meets the design guidelines for the Broadway district.
Thank you, Melissa. Is the applicant here?
Hello, I'm Jamie Rose with Remick Architecture. I'm an architect, so I'm representing the applicant. Thank you for your review. I think everything here is understood. The owner just wants to maximize visibility with the upper level signage. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this project? So, seeing none, close public hearing. Commissioners?
I appreciate the thoughtful analysis of the signage. Do we address the color of the lights going up to the top?
Not in the conditions of approval, but the guidelines do require that they be, I think, a warm white light. So that will be reviewed when we review the fixtures.
And then there's one other question I have. There was a very substantial fire at this location on May 5th, and I was wondering if it had any impact on the feasibility of this project or...
Right. Ms. Rose and I have been in communication about that. Also, our inspector spoke with the general contractor. It seems like most of the damage is not structural, so we'll work with them, and if a preservation permit is needed for, to repair, for repairs, then we'll work with them on that.
Other comments?
This one, the signage is a little more near and dear to my heart. And so I want to make sure I understand, because signage has been and will be an arms race when it comes to historic assets on Broadway, 2nd Avenue. And I want to be consistent. So in understanding the rooftop addition allotment, and a lot sounds like how I would describe it. Are we arguing that Tacos is a mural, or is that really for the We Sing on the side? And so it seems to me that it's, and this is a scenario of and I'm trying to hold the line, I guess, more than anything.
I can speak to that. We definitely did not review this as painted signage, the section that kind of results in murals, because it's located on a front facade, and that would require it to be located on a secondary or a rear facade. With this, I know there have been requests over the years to add signage to that stepped back portion of rooftop additions. And I think the commission has considered a few of those cases, so we just took those decisions and kind of applied that rationale here, finding that it, could be appropriate, and also taking into account, which you don't really feel it in the renderings, but it is a stepped back portion. And again, we are recommending that it be reduced from, I think, 115, I forget the number, but down to no more than 40 square feet.
And can I piggyback onto that, just talking about the front facade? I don't think since this term of mine on this used to be all we dealt with, but my last term was Broadway signage and things, so this is new, ish. But with that, like he said, was that under the mural, which you've answered, thank you. But I think you hit on it a little bit, but is this the only one, like, on a front facade, I don't remember any that had the business name painted, and we're saying that could be appropriate, because the building is already painted and it wouldn't be
Right.
necessarily replicable on other structures that are not currently painted. I don't know if I've just missed them or if I'm not thinking of them all, but this seems different.
Yeah, and you haven't seen this sort of request. It kind of came down to when we reviewed it against the guidelines and saw that language kind of in the description of wall signs, talking about how they could be appropriate as wall signs. And you would see this sort of thing historically, thinking that it could be appropriate, and then the fact that this building is already painted made it feel definitely more appropriate in this case.
But so for the, let's, not thinking about the top part, the step back part, but the front, just with the tacos alteri, the types of the things up underneath, and then the projecting sign, is all that being considered as the square footage allotment for the front facade?
Yes, and I did note it is over the square footage. We kind of felt like when you step back and take it all together, the proposed signage doesn't overwhelm this facade. And I would note as well that while this is not a historic projecting sign, it is being refaced from a previous one, which we frequently see with historic and non-historic projecting signs. I think these signs can be quite pricey to manufacture, so frequently they're reused. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I'm just consider now, but yeah. On one follow-up. So if we're, again, if we are uncomfortable with the painted signage at the front, that front part, would that mean that they're allowed more of the projecting sign type of thing? Or what, like, if possible, right?
Right. I mean, if you're uncomfortable with the idea of painted signage outside of the mural, then, I mean, largely what they're proposing would not work. As far as the front, with that projecting sign, the leftover allotment is 4 square feet. So they would have to kind of reconsider, they would have to reconsider the approach here.
So if we're taking this all together as applied, how much over the allotment are we? Sorry, it's just hit you on the spot here.
It exceeds the allotment by 39 square feet.
Okay.
So the tacos alteri is 33 square feet. The signs above the transoms are about 10 square feet total. And then that existing projecting sign is 49 square feet. So those are where those numbers are coming from. And then the maximum allotment is 53 based on 2 square feet per linear footage of frontage, which is.
Okay, so the maximum is 53, and they're kind of almost at that with just the current existing projecting sign.
Correct.
Thank you.
So thank you, Caitlin. I think that establishes we got a whole lot of signage going on here. And I know we just ate, but I could really eat some tacos right now. I think the staff's making sounds like a pretty good compromise here in terms of allowing the painted sign here on the facade, and it's a reasonable request to reduce what's going on the only issue we have is the size of the sign on the upper level. And passersby are not going to have, with that thing reduced, everybody knows what this place sells, so. I think the staff recommendation here is fine, I can support it, so. Anyway, some thoughts.
And just to clarify that taco sign on the top, as you're illustrating it, that's their proposal, and you want it's going to be shorter, correct?
Well, yeah, it would be smaller. So the dimensions would, yeah.
It'll go from something over 100 square feet to 40 square feet.
Okay, so by half, more than by half. Okay, thank you.
Certainly would want to see that one. Scale is important to that signage, its relationship to how it works with the building. Yeah, we had some conversation in our in our meeting earlier about how do you measure and all those things. Signage is measured in square footage, in absolutes. This is close to a 200% permission. I would have a very difficult time with another applicant on a larger building saying it was, yeah, it's cool. But that is me. We like to deal in absolutes, and for me, signage, I think being part of this conversation, these many years ago, to try to define a unified signage guideline, I don't disagree in, I guess, the artfulness of how it appears across the facade, but this is something that's measured in absolutes, and that causes me concern. That's all I have on this one.
I agree with you on that. And again, just that was, I think, my line of questioning. It just seemed like a lot. And then I was just wanted to dig into those numbers. You know, yeah, I don't know what I'm comfortable, but I mean, just knowing that the current projecting sign is almost at the maximum allowable, and then to add more when there's, that to me makes me uncomfortable for all of the properties that we've, you know, denied this from, because again, I think that's the one kind of thing that we do that isn't an absolute number. So that to me is my thoughts on this. I don't know where to go from here or what other commissioners think, but it's just a lot. It's too much, in my opinion. Keep it on for you.
Yeah. I'll just echo that as well. I mean, I don't know what the solution is, but the upper level taco sign is massively oversized. And then I don't know how we escape from the fact that the 2 rows of painted signage plus the projecting sign are still way over what a normal signage alignment would be combined. So, I don't know, I'm just not on board with it either.
Just briefly, I think I'll go in. I think I agree, or I don't know, was agreeing pleased with Commissioner Price. I thought staff did a healthy compromise, and that the upper, it seems a little large by the standards. Lower doesn't bother me as much, but I hear what my fellow commissioners are saying about kind of the absolutes on this. Though this is something we can measure, I will maybe remind everyone, there's still some interpretation in that we've, I think I said it before, we've denied signage on the sides of buildings that were 90 feet tall because they were not 85 feet tall. And I know that sounds like I misspoke, but I didn't. We have denied signage on buildings that were 90 feet tall because they were not 85 foot tall. So there is absolutes and absolutes and some, I think, room for interpretation. I think I would be for staff's recommendation, but want to hear more.
And so to speak to the entire application, there was some other side signage. I'm in line with the directional signage on the side as painted. Don't take issue with that in terms of the alignment, and am convinced by the mural argument on existing painted brick. Comments on the front remain.
Commissioner Cashin, what do you think?
I tend to go with,
You want to do your microphone?
oh, yes, sorry. I think staff did an excellent job. And I would be swayed by their argument. So, shall I make is there any more discussion? So I will venture to make a motion that with respect to 111 4th Avenue South, we approve this application with the conditions as listed in the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Williams. Any other discussion? So all in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
4, 5, 5. Okay, great. Okay, all opposed? Okay. The motion passes then. Good. Okay. Thank you.
Before we begin this one, Chair, I'd like to say that I will be recusing myself from discussion or deliberation on 122nd Avenue North.
Okay. So 122nd Avenue North.
Yes. All right. And before we start, just want to note that we did receive comment from Councilmember Coupin. It came in a bit late, so we printed it out and included it on the dais. All right. So this is an application to construct a Marquee addition that includes both static and changeable copy signs, and to install 2 digital menu boards on the side walls of the recessed entrance at 120 2nd Avenue North. So this building was constructed in 1994 and does not contribute to the historic character of the 2nd Avenue Historic Preservation Zoning Overlay. In 2023, the Commission approved storefront changes and a rooftop addition. And in 2024, a preservation permit for signage was issued administratively, and that included refacing the previous Wild Horse Saloon projecting sign. So this project falls under 2 separate sections of the design guidelines. The Marquee itself is reviewed as an addition, while the signage added to the Marquee is reviewed under the signage standards. So first, we'll go over the Marquee addition and followed by the signage. So the design guidelines identify marquees as a type of canopy and says that they are appropriate if the design is architecturally compatible with the overall storefront design in terms of size, location, color, and material, and does not detract from the character of the building. The design guidelines goes further in the definitions to state that a marquee is a type of canopy that incorporates signage and lighting, and that it historically was used for hotels and theaters. Staff finds that the proposed marquee meets the design guidelines in this case. This building is likely the widest publicly accessible building on this block of 2nd Avenue. It's approximately 96 feet in frontage. The marquee is scaled so that it's roughly 1/3 of the width of the building and located above the primary entrance. The marquee will cover transoms and the storefront cornice in this location. However, staff finds that it's appropriate since a canopy or wall signage would likely interact with the building similarly given the design of the building. So the marquee projects approximately 4 feet from the facade with the side panels projecting out at a 17-degree angle so that only that 10-foot wide center panel is at that full 4-foot projection. The marquee is to be constructed primarily of aluminum with signage proposed for all 3 panels. While not shown on the plans, LED marquee bulbs are proposed on the underside of the marquee. So I think we usually refer to this as bare bulb lighting, and staff finds that it's a typical feature of historic marquees and appropriate for building lighting in this location. So here are the renderings of the marquee as seen from across the street and the intersection of Broadway and 2nd. Staff finds that the design and lighting of the marquee is consistent with the design guidelines and characteristics of marquees seen in historic settings. The applicant Request that the project be considered under the standards for tourist-oriented businesses, which allows for additional signage allotment as well as changeable copy. The design guidelines includes 2 criteria for tourist-oriented businesses. One, that there be a minimum permanent fixed seating capacity of 500, and second, that the use should offer lawful activities or services to the public for cultural, historical, recreational, educational, or entertainment purposes. So with this business in particular, Category 10, it hosts 18 to 20 ticketed events annually, which staff finds meets the second criteria, so it is clearly an entertainment venue for the public. While the venue does not have 500 fixed seats, staff finds that the applicant demonstrates that the venue meets the functional intent of the design guidelines, as it is a high-capacity, ticketed, live entertainment venue. So Category 10 has a maximum occupancy of about 1,800, with 800 seats in Hurricane Hall, and hosts upwards of 20 ticketed events annually with an average attendance of 1,000 per event. So the criteria that tourist-oriented businesses should have at least 500 fixed seats tends to lean into the characteristics of traditional theaters, which use changeable copy and additional signage to provide notice of frequently changing events in an entertainment venue that can accommodate a higher capacity. With the application, the applicant included a letter that states that operations for live entertainment venues have evolved to rely on flexible seating, standing configurations rather than the traditional fixed seating, and notes that the absence of those fixed seats is more of a design choice rather than a limitation of scale. So since Category 10 is a high-capacity ticketed entertainment venue with frequently changing events, staff finds that the scale, functionality, and signage needs of this particular use and business align with that of what you would see with a tourist-oriented business, and that it is appropriate to apply the modifications for tourist-oriented businesses in this case. That was like a tongue twister. All right. So the signs on the marquee were reviewed as canopy signage because we've heard before the design guidelines refers to them as a type of, marquees as a type of canopy. And canopy signs are included in the overall allotment for the building, along with projecting signs and wall signs. So signage is proposed on all 3 panels of the marquee and adds about 147 square feet to the existing 114 square foot projecting sign with the former Wild Horse sign. There is an existing shingle sign that is also being refaced. However, shingle signs are not included in the allotment. So with the marquee signage and the projecting sign, this would bring the total signage on 2nd Avenue to 261 square feet, which would exceed the allotment for the 2nd Avenue side by 70 square feet. The marquee also includes changeable copy, manual on the left side panel and digital on the right side panel. Staff finds that the proposed sign area as well as the changeable copy are appropriate as a modification. Given the width of this facade, the scale of the marquee, which helps, it's modestly scaled in comparison to the facade and helps achieve legibility without overwhelming the building or clashing with architectural details. And the location of the signage, which is a characteristic of a historic marquee. So the request also includes 2 digital signs, which are like menu boards, to be located on the sidewalls of the recessed entry, kind of shown in this location with the blue arrow. This is the same location as existing menu boards. The proposed digital boards are about 9 square feet each. Since menu boards are not addressed by the design guidelines, they've been treated more like directional signs or address signs on a building and have not been reviewed as wall signs due to their small size and their functionality. So these are being reviewed in this case, since they're proposed to be digital, which is only permitted with this modification. So in the proposed location, the menu boards, staff finds the menu boards won't detract from the character of the building or compete with the marquee, since it is in this recessed portion. As far as these like smaller digital boards, the commission has approved similar at other live entertainment venues like the Ryman. So in conclusion, staff recommends approval of the proposed marquee and signage as a modification for tourist-oriented businesses with the condition that the bare bulbs on the underside of the marquee structure be a warm white color and not flash or chase. And with this condition, staff finds that the marquee addition and signage meet the 2nd Avenue Historic Preservation Zoning Overlay Design Guidelines given the unique conditions of the building, appropriate scale and location of the marquee, and the building's use as a high occupancy ticketed live music venue.
Thank you, Melissa. Is the applicant here?
So good afternoon, and thank you for your time today. My name is Ron Carrier, and I'm the Vice President of Food and Beverage for Opry Entertainment Group. We're the enterprise that owns and operates Category 10 at 120 2nd Avenue North. Our company's been a part of this corridor for a long time. We first invested in 2nd Avenue back in the mid-'90s with the opening of the Wild Horse Saloon. And we've had a front row seat to the evolution of this street over decades, including the challenges that came from the 2020 bombing. And from a personal aside, I feel compelled to share this. I joined the company back in 2008, and I was the general manager of the Wild Horse Saloon for 8 years down there, so it holds a special place in my heart. But as longtime stewards of the property, we're encouraged to see the early indicators of the reemergence of 2nd Avenue as a vibrant, entertainment-oriented district. And it's thanks to the new streetscape, the wider sidewalks, the infrastructure, the trees, the lighting, all the things that the city's doing to kind of drive that section of the business or the city again. And we participated in that as well in terms of investing over $40 million into this new Category 10 property. It is a corridor for tourist-oriented development, and that's what we're trying to really help with that down there. Like many businesses here, we felt the impact of the disruption over the last several years, and now that the streets reopened and we're focused on doing our part to bring back people as we restore foot traffic, energy, vibrancy to the corridor, in a way that respects its unique character. What's important to us about this marquee sign, and I think everybody would understand this, is our whole goal is to get the folks that are walking up and down Broadway, when they're standing on that corner of Broadway and 2nd, to look down and be able to see something that's compelling to them and drives them down. And it's not just for us. A rising tide rises all ships. There are many merchants on 2nd Avenue that are struggling and have been struggling. And so, well, we're not going to stand here and say that, on a soapbox, it's, we're the bastion for all, but we do think it does help everybody, right? Opry Entertainment Group, we operate several businesses within the historic overlays, and we understand the importance of investing in design that is contextually appropriate while remaining in touch with the shifting dynamics of how people enjoy entertainment these days. It's different. Did a great job of explaining, Category 10 hosts 18 to 20 ticketed events a year, averaging about 1,000 people per. And, to the comment about the fixed seating thing, we totally get that. But our venue holds 1,800 people, and we have done setups with theater seating for 800 on the first floor and another 160 around the rails. We've done seating in rounds of 8 with table service while the show's going on. And we've done shows without any furniture at all because the context of the group that's coming to that show wants to dance and move around. And the flexibility is what makes it compelling. We're excited about the opportunity with this, and hopefully you guys will see the value of us adding what we consider a relatively small marquee sign for the size and scope of our building. And I want to introduce my partner here, Shaw Flippin. He's our Vice President of Design and Construction, and he's going to give you a little more detail about the sign itself.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Shaw Flippin. Reside on Barton Avenue here in Nashville, and I work at Opry Entertainment Group. And like Ron, I have some personal connections to this building. I was actually involved in the owner's rep project management team in 1994 when it was opened as the Wild Horse. And just something to note was when we were called Gaylord Entertainment at that time, when we purchased the property on 2nd Avenue, we tore down the existing building and we built back the Wild Horse in '94. It was built new, but we tried to adhere to the historic standards and bring in components of the design that looked appropriate for the area. Fast forward 30 years later, the Wild Horse closed in New Year's Eve '23. And then working with R.C. Matthews, we renovated the property into Category 10 with Luke Combs. We spent over $42.5 million. The building consisted of a basement and 3 levels. That was about 60,000 square feet. We added a rooftop of about 10,000 square feet. So now we're at 5 levels, over 70,000 square feet. Our fire marshal capacity down there is 2,465 people. That includes staff and guests. So we can well accomplish accommodating over 500 guests in our property. If we'll go back to some of the slides, we can show you the signs and the dimensions just for reference. We also want to note that to the right and left of us, to the right of the property, we own and operate the 114 gift shop. And we feel like that this marquee doesn't really impede any of the signage to our neighbors. We think it is additive and a good addition. And as Ron mentioned, we're using this as wayfinding. We're trying to get people off of Broadway to turn the corner, to come down 2nd Avenue, and also for wayfinding for the front door. We have 95 lineal feet of storefront, and we're only covering about a little less than 35 feet there, 4-foot extension out from the building. We only have 1 digital board, and that's facing the Broadway to try to get, track folks down. Let's go to the other slide that tells more detail on so that one you can see on the right would be the digital board, which is only 2 feet tall and 11 feet long. And then the manual on the left side, and then a static lit sign on the center. So again, just to recap, we're one of the largest buildings on 2nd Avenue. We feel like we're the anchor. We've been very involved in the revitalization down there. We're pleased with the investment the city has put in on 2nd Avenue. And one other comment on the menu boards, that was the second part of the request. Those are just replacing what would be static, menu boards, upcoming shows. And both of those face inward and do not face 2nd Avenue. So we'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any in the audience wishing to speak to this project? Seeing none, we'll close public hearing. We'll have discussion from the commissioners. I do have, Melissa, one question for you. On the electronic sign that actually faces Broadway, are there regulations about how often that changes, or whether you can do anything with an electronic sign, and we've got other regulations that deal with chasing lights and flashing lights and how often things change. Do we have any, does anything apply to this particular project?
Okay, thank you. So for the duration, seems like it's 8 seconds. So the message must have a static display for a minimum duration of 8 seconds. Okay. So it wouldn't have almost a strobing effect.
Okay, great. Okay. Other commissioner comments, questions?
I just have a quick question that's not related to an issue with the sign. Sorry. I just don't remember us dealing with a business before with a tourist-oriented business label. Is that something we see that often, or?
Not often, but you have with, what is 200 Broadway? Yeah.
Okay. Chiefs, that's right.
Chiefs,
that's
yes.
Right. Cool. That was just for my own knowledge, but thanks.
Anyone else? Larry?
Self-ordained signage police. I think, just the history there is, we love our children very much. We want to see them grow up and mature. And so anyways, a few comments on that. I'm compelled by certainly the argument not the argument, the presentation that was made regarding seating and the capacity of this venue. It's unique. And I think the regulation of 500 fixed seats was, I can say it was not by accident, so that we just don't go handing that out like it's candy. And I'm compelled that this venue, albeit they don't have 500 seats regularly bolted to the floor because it would just not serve their interest, it certainly exceeds what I think the intent of the guidelines is. From my view, is again, we're not, we throw marquees up all over the place, they lose their effectiveness, and you're thinking of something else to draw attention to a business. So I find it appropriate and meeting the intent of the guideline in this case. The other, in all its, in all areas, or certainly in areas at least that I can perceive, the width of this facade and, passing the eye test in terms of, does this work? Does it overpower the building? Is now this building all about signage? To me, just straight eye test without measuring those things. It's appropriate, and it meets what I think. Unlike my comments on the previous one, I don't find this. It doesn't look like it doesn't fit in terms of just as in passing the eye test. There was some comment, and I had some. On the previous case, measuring things in absolutes, again, contradicting myself from the previous one. I think this one gets over, but it's certainly not by 200%. And it is in keeping with the facade, the width of the facade, and the fact that it really is unique on 2nd Avenue, certainly, and I would say in the entertainment district downtown, it certainly approaches and is in the unique feature of those. I don't think there are too many spots where you get this much frontage certainly on Broadway. I'm reminded by the old Heilig Myers, which was Paradise Park, and I can't remember. What is it? It's Friends in Low Places now. This one seems similar to that in terms of the amount of frontage and some of the deference that we gave to that property. It's not the same, and each case is individual, but I think this one, given the long history of Gaylord and Opry Entertainment's investment here, I see the same thing, same things at work here. So those are my comments, and I support the staff's recommendation.
Other comments?
Melissa, do we have any other digital signs? Chief sign, is it digital? It is? Yes, okay. I remember back in 94, when you opened the Wild Horse, and I was very, didn't know how I felt about it, but 2nd Avenue needed so much help. And those buildings there were, I spent Thanksgivings in those buildings. Y'all did a great job. And I think this sign, it does not overwhelm the building in any way. I think it's needed for 2nd Avenue from a directional standpoint, not only for your business, but for people turning the corner. And so, I approve this project.
I'll concur with all that. I just wanted to add a small note. And renderings can be deceptive. And I don't know if it's a happy accident or not, but the one looking from Broadway, it looks like you kind of put it on a slightly different plane than your neighbor's signs. So it's not going to completely kind of block them off. And that's a nice touch of working with your neighbors. I don't know if that was, I doubt that's a requirement, but it seemed like a nice thing to do. So I'm in support of staff's recommendation.
Do I hear a motion there?
I'll move on in regards to 122nd Avenue North to approve staff's recommendation of approval with conditions.
We have a motion. Commissioner Smith, have a second?
Second.
Second for Commissioner Bryce. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. Okay. 1403 Paris Avenue.
Okay, next up is 1403 Paris Avenue. This is a property in the Belmont-Hillsborough Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. This house has been before the commission several times over the past year. I'm going to try and keep this presentation brief, but I'm happy to answer clarifying questions regarding the history of the project after the public hearing. In short, in November 2025, MHCC issued a partial demolition permit for the removal of a non-historic rear addition and for interior demolition work. As required, the applicant submitted a shoring plan. In March 2026, the commission approved an application for an addition subject to conditions. The applicant submitted revised plans and received a preservation permit for that addition on April 13th. The following day, staff received a call from a concerned neighbor that the house had been demolished. Upon investigation and discussion with the applicant, staff learned that the house had collapsed while the permitted demolition work was underway. The applicant submitted these photographs taken shortly before the collapse. The structure was clearly braced with new wood supports. The photographs also show structural damage, including termite damage, rot, and issues with joints separating. These conditions are also spelled out in structural assessments submitted by 2 different engineers. Given the disrepair of the house and the apparent good faith actions of ownership, staff finds that the collapse of the house was not self-imposed and was accidental. Staff finds that if the building were still standing and the applicant submitted the photographs and structural assessments that are now in hand, staff would have recommended approval for an economic hardship request based on the poor condition of the structure. Given that the house collapsed and was not purposely demolished without a permit, staff does not recommend requiring reconstruction. However, rather than start over with a new infill application, the applicant is asking to construct the plan that was previously approved in April with a few minor revisions. Staff finds that the overall massing has not changed considerably and is appropriate for the context. Here are the right side elevations, both previously approved and currently requested. And the left side. The site plan keeps the general footprint and meets all setback requirements. Staff is recommending approval of the after-the-fact demolition, finding that demolition meets section 17.40.420E, and staff recommends approval of the proposed infill with the condition that final materials be reviewed and approved by MHCC prior to purchase and installation. The applicant is not able to be here today, but I will answer any questions that you have after public comment.
And opening public hearing, does anyone wish to speak to this project? Seeing none, close public hearing. Commissioners?
Thank you, Jenny. Would you go whether it's like the current and the previous? So what is one just doesn't have a person and is blurry? Or? I don't know.
Yes, so the person is not.
The person doesn't exist anymore and it's blurry.
So
I'm like, what am I?
Caitlin,
so,
am I?
yeah, sure.
I was like, is my contact dirty?
That's called high architectural treatment.
They are very similar.
Oh, the door. Okay. And the window. Okay,
Yeah, the door shifts a little bit.
It's like,
Also,
Where's Waldo in this thing?
they are still doing the ridge raise, which they don't have to do, but they opted to do that. And you can see in the second version, there is a taller, so this ridge pokes a little bit wider. You can see it here. And then here, there's one little spot where the eave is both taller and wider. So yes, it's very modest in terms of differences on the front. On the side, you can see they've extended this little porch area out a little bit. So this is kind of covered conditioned space with a deck projecting. This area has changed just a little bit. They've pulled this inset forward. Again, there's no longer a historic house to inset from, so we didn't think that was problematic. And similarly, just a change back here on the other side. So very similar overall, just some modest changes.
But Jenny, if I'm looking at this application, it says request to move the house on the lot.
Yes, you approved, no. Initially, they wanted to move the house on the lot. The very first thing they asked for, you said you could not move the house on the lot, but you could rebuild the foundation. So they're raising it 2 feet because it was sitting so low on grade that they were having water issues. So you had permitted them to raise the house 2 feet, but it is not moving on the lot.
Okay, they're not asking for that again.
They're not.
Okay, great.
It did. Yes.
I remember going by that house in April, and it was in poor shape. This is my favorite little street in Belmont. It's just an adorable street, and speaking of the university. And, but I think that their proposal to rebuild so similarly to the house is admirable, and so I'd be for this project.
Do I hear a motion?
With respect to 1403 Paris Avenue, I agree to recommend approval of the staff recommendations for the rebuilding of the home.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
And I'm sorry, does that include approval of the after-the-fact demolition? I believe we said addition, but I don't believe you said after-the-fact demolition. I think we need that on the record. Correct? Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, so you made the motion to approve with staff conditions, which would include the approval of the after-the-fact demolition, all right? Is that?
Great, perfect. Thank you.
Is that good?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, great. Motion carries. Okay, 1003 Maxwell Avenue.
All right, the next case is 1003 Maxwell Avenue. This is for new construction of new infill. The historic house at 1003 Maxwell Avenue was demolished in 2024 by Metro Code's property standards. At the time, the house had suffered from extreme neglect and deterioration for years. The Codes Department first flagged this property as a property standards issue in 2001 and received numerous complaints up until 2023. On the screen is a timeline of some significant events for the property. 2001, the earliest record of property standards issuing violations at this address. 2008, Maxwell Heights Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay was established. 2020, property standards violation ultimately results in a demolition order. 2022, the owners appeal the demolition order to the BZA. July 2022, Codes rescinds demolition order after the owners show proof that they will repair it. And December 2022, the current owners purchased the property. No significant repairs had been made when they purchased it. Aerial photos in a Google Street View from 2022 show that the current owner purchased the house with some severe deterioration, particularly at the rear where the roof form had caved in. Here's a Google Street View image from January 2023, just 1 month after the owner purchased the structure. The owner did apply for a preservation permit for an addition in 2023, but the permit was not issued because staff did not receive a shoring plan. The owner conducted some partial demolition, removing the siding and the sidewalls as a result. Some attempts at shoring were made during construction, however, the work was inadequate and the building was never properly protected, leaving it largely exposed to the elements. The partial renovation work combined with the improper shoring and protection exacerbated the deterioration of the home. In February 2024, MHZC considered property standards request to demolish the structure. The staff recommendation from the case stated, from staff observation, it is clear that the house is so far deteriorated and that so much of the house has already been demolished that there is almost nothing left to restore. While the front facade of the house is still largely intact, little beyond the front facade remains. The staff recommendation also stated, based on a recent inspection, MHZC staff found the home to be in such an extreme level of deterioration that it may soon collapse. At the time, the owner did not submit any information typically required for an economic hardship application, like an engineer's report or cost estimates for repair. The applicant for the demolition request at the time was Property Standards. At the February 2024 hearing, the commission voted to disapprove the full demolition of the house at 1003 Maxwell Avenue, finding that demolition did not meet the section of the ordinance for economic hardship, nor the design guidelines for appropriate demolition, given the available information. However, the commission did vote to allow the Property Standards Division to demolish the building in whole or in part as needed for the neighborhood's health and welfare. The commission further voted that any new construction on the site be required to be a reconstruction of the historic building, and no additional permits may be issued until the new construction has been permitted and received a favorable inspection. So basically, the commission in 2024 voted to require a reconstruction of the house on the site. Property Standards did demolish the house in 2024, and the lot is currently vacant, as can be seen in this street view. The applicant proposes infill that has a similar scale and form to the historic building previously on the site, but that is not an exact reconstruction. Although the commission's decision in 2024 was that the house should be reconstructed as it was, staff finds that in this unique situation, a design that is similar is appropriate. The house previously on the lot was demolished by the Property Standards Division, not by the current owner. And there's sufficient evidence that much of the deterioration existed prior to the sale of the property to the current owner in 2022. For these reasons, staff recommends that the commission consider approving a design that is not an exact reconstruction of the house previously on the lot. On the left is the house previously on the lot, which was 36 feet wide, 29 feet 3 inches tall. The proposed infill is on the right and is 37 feet wide and 28 feet 9 inches tall. The proposed infill also has a similar hipped roof form with hipped dormers. The proposed porch is a full-width porch, although the previous porch was a partial-width porch with a wraparound element. Overall, staff finds that the proposed design is in the spirit of the house previously on the lot without being an exact replica. Here's the left side facade. The proposed infill is deeper and has a larger footprint than what was previously on the lot. The previous house had a depth of 56 feet 3 inches and was approximately 2,205 square feet. The footprint of the proposed house is approximately 3,037 square feet with a depth of 86 feet 8 inches. The proposed infill has a massing that replicates a house with an addition. Staff finds that although the proposed massing is larger than what was previously on the lot, it is in keeping with the historic context, particularly since the lot is deep at 211 feet and over 10,000 square feet. Here's the right facade. Again, although the footprint depth is larger than what was there, staff finds that because of the unique conditions surrounding the demolition of this house and because the proposed design is in keeping with the overall neighborhood, the design is appropriate. The site plan shown here on the screen shows a construction entrance off of Maxwell. While a temporary entrance is appropriate, staff recommends that no new permanent driveway or curb cut be installed. Staff further recommends that the applicant include a walkway from the sidewalk to the front porch. So in conclusion, staff recommends approval of the proposed infill with the following conditions shown on the screen. Most are pretty standard conditions. 2 is that a walkway be added from the sidewalk to the front porch. 3, that no new curb cut or driveway be added from Maxwell Avenue and all vehicular access be via the rear alley. But the rest are just standard conditions for a new infill.
Is the applicant here?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Do you have any public comment for us on this project? So, close public hearing. Discussion, questions, motion?
Got a question. Just a process question. If a normal, if a home gets a property standards demolition order and is torn down in one of our overlays, is the condition of building it back as was? Is that a normal stipulation, or is that something we did because there was a request for demolition and we didn't want like a end around?
I don't remember every single one, but the ones that I'm remembering, we have not required a full reconstruction when it was property standards. Maybe I don't know all those cases, if we had some sort of more evidence at that point than we thought we had in 2024. Typically with economic hardship cases, if this project had come to us before you with an economic hardship case, and you approve the demolition based on economic hardship, we don't require that the house be built back. It just needs to be built back to something that meets the guidelines in the historic context. In cases where somebody has kind of willfully gone in and demoed a house, or, has OVO demoed during construction, we have required a reconstruction.
Thank you. Well, I want to hear more from fellow commissioners, but I think I'm fairly compelled by staff's presentation that this was falling down, I think quite literally, and that what the owner is proposing to put back is in keeping with the neighborhood and with what was there before, and it does seem like it is bigger, but that it looks like a lot of what we'd approve of a existing historic home with an addition. It doesn't feel like the addition is overpowering. So I'm leaning towards staff's recommendation. I want to hear more if anyone has anything to say.
I agree with Commissioner Smith. I'd invite him to make a motion.
In regards to 1003 Maxwell Avenue, I move to accept staff recommendation of approval with all conditions.
Motion by Commissioner Smith, second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Price. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 1725 4th Avenue North.
Okay, this is the one that was on consent and requested to be pulled from consent. It's an economic hardship case. It's a request for demolition of a contributing house at 1725 4th Avenue North, arguing for economic hardship. The house at 1725 is a circa 1890 house that contributes to the historic character of the Salem Town Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. The house has suffered from deferred maintenance over the years. Photos from 1969 through today show how the house's state has deteriorated. As a result of the building's condition, Metro Codes opened an active housing demolition case for this property in April of 2025. Furthermore, several changes have been made to the house over the years, including window alterations on the front facade of the home, the addition of non-historic siding and trim, and porch post removal. The applicant has provided one engineer's report from Benjamin Griffith with Kidwell Scott Engineering. The report discusses deterioration throughout the structure, including sagging roof framing, interior moisture damage, and fungal growth due to missing roof elements, the deterioration of all interior walls and floors, compromised floor framing, and an inadequate foundation. Staff recently visited the property and staff observed the issues discussed in the engineer's report. Staff suspects that in order to restore the home, significant portions of the roof framing would need replacement and significant foundation repair and/or replacement would be needed. Much of the wall framing remains covered, but given the fungal growth and roof deterioration, staff suspects that significant deterioration of wall framing would likely be uncovered with interior demolition work. Furthermore, window alterations have also been made to the front and side elevations of the home over the years, compromising what little historic framing and siding might remain along the front and side facades. Here are some photos of the interior and of the foundation. While not all sections of 1740-420E were met with the applicant's application, staff does not find them necessary in this case based on the compelling evidence of the engineer's report and visual review of the property. Staff recommends approval of demolition based on the inability to rehabilitate the building and the fact that all necessary repairs would require replacement of most of the original structure. So in conclusion, staff is recommending approval of full demolition of the house at 1725 4th Avenue North, finding that the applicant has met the burden of proof for sections 2, 5, and 8 of 1740-420E for demolition based on economic hardship. And you also received some public comment for this project that was saved in the folder in support of demolition. And Mitch Hodge is here for the applicant.
Hello, my name is Mitch Hodge. I'm the architect. I toured this house back in August. Omar Ellis, the owner, he contacted me and I set up a meeting with Joseph and Melissa, and we did a walkthrough and just in short, it's a no-brainer, everything about this house. Well, once you tear apart the additions, the back addition and the side porch, which was added later, it's a concrete slab now, you're left with a little shotgun house. Even that, it's sitting on the foundation's a combination of brick and dry stacked block and 4x4, rotting 4x4s. The floor joists are just 4x4s sitting, about 3 to 4 feet on center with tongue and groove of it. The walls are warped. The roof is just 2x4 framing and it's sagging. There's no ridge beam, so it's pretty obvious. Even if you tried to save it, there'd be just no saving. You'd have to just tear it down, whatever element. If you just pick any one of those elements, the rest have to go with it. So again, I'm here just to ask questions. We did speak with the gentleman that had concerns, Trey, and Joseph and I met with him before the meeting, and he understands that we're just looking for the demolition, and it's not necessarily design review at this point, so he's fine with it. And that's it. I'm here if you have any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Mitch. Seeing no one here to give public comment, I'll close public hearing. So, commissioners, discussion, a motion.
I was one of a few commissioners that toured this, can confirm. It's a terrible safety hazard. It's a shame. I like these small houses. There's a couple down the street that have been restored and are nice. This one's too far gone, so, yeah. Support the staff recommendation. I'm happy to make a motion. On 1725 4th Avenue North, I move to approve the staff recommendation for full demolition.
Second by Commissioner Mayhall. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you. That completes our action. Thank you, Mitch. So the next thing that we have, that concludes our public business. Is there any update report from Metro Historical Commission?
I'll make this quick. I always forget that this is something I have to do at the end of these meetings. But we did have our meeting, and then last week was a very successful preservation awards ceremony. So I'd like to just give a shout out to everyone who was there. I saw a few of us amongst the crowd. So just really great residential, commercial projects to be, and people and groups to be celebrated in town for doing this work. So that's a new thing. Obviously, we have a new executive director, just a couple months in, Caroline, who will be very familiar to most of us as she's been in the staff for a while. So just keep your eye on a lot of new markers, a lot of new events. So just, I guess, keep your eye on Historical Commission when they put out their agendas, and if anything's interesting. Dr. Williams was our guest speaker this past Monday, presented to us. So, yeah, that's all.
Excellent. Planning Commission?
No major report, I don't believe. We are seeing more and more kind of historic comments on items in front of us, which is good and exciting. As far as just making sure that perspective is accounted for, cemeteries, et cetera, a few historical homes. But other than that, nothing exactly specifically pertaining.
Commissioner Mosley, DTC?
No report. I was not at the last meeting. Joni might be able to fill in for me. No?
No.
So the last thing for everyone is, I would like to invite everyone to attend the Preserve Nashville launch celebration. As you may have heard, Historic Nashville, Inc. and the Preservation Society of Nashville have now merged into one organization called Preserve Nashville. And we'll have that celebration on Wednesday, the 27th, from 5:30 to 7 at the Women's Club of Nashville, which is at 3206 Hillsborough Pike. So, and love to see you all there. So, great. Good. Motion to adjourn? Oh, so we're adjourned. Great. Thank you. for the script. And for the water. I ran out.
I know, I heard you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.
I have it at the right angle and then lets me press 0.